Chapter 716. Jing Yu quickly grabbed the woman's throat and covered her mouth with one hand, dragging her to a corner. Coincidentally, the door of the cabin opened and 3 people walked out. This is so satisfying. Jing Yu covered the woman's mouth tightly, not allowing her to make any sound. Her golden eyes narrowed as she stared at the actions of the 3 men. I'm about to lose all my pants. My luck today is really bad. Another person said, go to the brothel and have some fun. I guarantee your luck will be good. The 3 men laughed as they walked to the deck and sat down. They casually grabbed some melon seeds and started to eat. It seemed that they would not be leaving for a while. Jing Yu frowned slightly and leaned back. However, she found that there was a door behind her. She raised her hand and pushed the door open. It turned out to be a warehouse. Jing Yu's figure flashed and dragged the woman into the room. She carefully closed the door and then heaved a sigh of relief. Don't make a sound. Otherwise, I will slit your throat. Jing Yu coldly whispered in the woman's ear. When she saw the woman nod in horror, she slowly let go of her hand that was restraining her. I don't want to die. I don't know anything. Once Jing Yu released the woman, she knelt on the ground weakly and looked at Jing Yu with fear in her eyes as she spoke in a trembling voice. Who are you? Why are you on this ship? Jing Yu looked down at the woman and asked with narrowed eyes. I was deceived. The woman looked at Jing Yu with tears in her eyes and slowly told her about her experience. Jing Yu then knew that this woman was actually a foreigner who had just arrived at Wufu Bay and was deceived into boarding the ship. Originally, she was going to seek refuge with her relatives. However, she did not expect to be deceived into boarding the ship. These men saw that this woman was beautiful and wanted to sell her for money. Therefore, they did not do anything to this woman. Just now, this woman managed to avoid the guards and wanted to jump into the sea to escape. However, she bumped into Jing Yu. I see. Jing Yu nodded and walked towards the woman. When the woman saw Jing Yu approaching, she retreated in horror as if she had seen a ghost. She cried and said, I really don't know anything. Don't kill me. I don't want to kill you. Jing Yu stopped and looked at the woman and said, I won't hurt you. Hearing this, the woman looked at Jing Yu with fear and hurriedly lowered her head and said, Your eyes? Jing Yu's body stiffened. Only now did she understand what the woman was afraid of. Her golden eyes flashed slightly. Jing Yu lowered her head and looked at the woman. She did not know what kind of feeling filled her heart, but she slightly tightened her grip on the blade in her hand. You hide well. I will go out first. Jing Yu turned and said, If I am not caught, you should leave quickly. Jing Yu did not want to say anything more. She turned and opened the door to go out. The woman seemed to be shocked by Jing Yu's action and covered her mouth in horror. Jing Yu left for a while and did not come back. Trembling, she stood up and carefully opened the door. Looking around, she did not see Jing Yu's figure. Suddenly, she burst into tears and shouted loudly, Help! Help! As soon as half of Jing Yu's foot stepped into the sea, she heard the woman's earth-shattering cries. Her face suddenly changed and she cursed fiercely, I'm too fucking kind. I should have just wrung this woman's throat. Chapter 717. Jing Yu looked up and saw dozens of heads poking out from the side of the boat. They happened to see Jing Yu diving into the water. Over here! Over here! Quick, quick, quick! Catch her! For a moment, the boat was filled with noise. Jing Yu's body moved nimbly and dived towards the bottom of the sea. The people on the boat shouted and took off their outer clothes. A few of them who were good swimmers dove into the water. Those people quickly chased after Jing Yu. Jing Yu, who was running in front, gradually stopped. She turned around and looked at the 3 or 4 people who were chasing after her. When the 3 or 4 people saw Jing Yu stop, their eyes lit up with joy. They were just about to swim over when they were surprised to see Jing Yu's pair of dark green eyes. They were emitting a deep light in the sea. Everyone widened their eyes in surprise and looked at each other, as if deciding whether to go forward or not. Jing Yu smiled and looked at those people with interest. Suddenly, she turned around and swam towards the bottom of the sea. When those people saw Jing Yu's movement, they thought Jing Yu was trying to escape. They quickly chased after her. However, just as they were about to catch up, Jingyu suddenly swam towards the surface of the sea. Everyone looked at Jingyu's back and swung their arms, wanting to chase after her. However, they suddenly saw a huge figure swimming in front of Jingyu. Gulp gulp. One of them widened his eyes in horror. When he saw the shark approaching, his face turned pale and he hurriedly ran back. How can a person swim faster than a fish in the sea? Big brother, don't joke around. Jingyu swam to the surface of the sea and saw with her own eyes that the shark opened its bloody mouth and swam towards those people. There was no bloody scene. All she could see was the blood flowing slowly in the water, and she could vaguely see the body being torn apart. Jingyu narrowed her eyes coldly. She swam towards the surface of the sea and took a deep breath. She panted slightly and looked up at the boat. The people on the boat didn't seem to know what was happening under the water. They were still lying on the edge of the boat and looking at the water. On this side, Jingyu swam towards Xiao Chen's boat and neatly flipped onto the boat along the reins. Originally, Jingyu wanted to be careful when she got on the boat, but when she got on the boat, she was stunned. She looked at the people lying on the ground with a dazed expression. What's going on? Yeah. Who? Just as Jingyu was puzzled, she saw Xiao Bai trying his best to drag a big man's body into the crowd. Jingyu looked at the pile of people and blinked. You're here. Xiao Chen stepped out from the corner and looked at Jingyu calmly. He slowly put the dagger on his waist and looked at Jingyu indifferently. What's going on? These people? Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen in a daze. Please don't tell me that Xiao Chen killed them. Didn't we agree not to act rashly? Don't worry, I didn't alert anyone. Xiao Chen glanced at the pile of corpses and said, they died very quietly. They didn't make a sound. Don't worry. What the fuck? Don't worry my ass. Jingyu looked at the pile of corpses and then looked at the completely empty boat. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen seriously and said, tell me first. Do you know how to drive this boat? Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback when he heard this, and then he answered seriously. Chapter 7:18. How dare you kill them all if you don't know how to drive? Jingyu stomped her feet and looked at Xiao Chen with an explosive expression. Xiao Chen was silent for a moment. He turned his head and looked at the ship some distance away. He looked at Jingyu calmly as if to say, isn't there another ship over there? However, Jingyu followed Xiao Chen's gaze and the corner of her mouth twitched. Before she could answer Xiao Chen, she saw a triangular tip floating on the surface of the sea. Under the watchful eyes of Xiao Chen and Jingyu, it violently crashed into the ship not far away. 1, 2, 3, countless sharks surrounded the ship. Jingyu could hear the screams from the ship even from such a distance. The ship shook violently from the collision. Even the ship that Jingyu and Xiao Chen were standing on was floating. Jingyu saw with her own eyes that those people were scrambling to escape, but there was nothing they could do. She saw with her own eyes that the ship was broken and seawater poured into it. The ship tilted and sank bit by bit. She saw with her own eyes that the vicious shark raised its head and bared its white teeth, ruthlessly tearing a living person apart. Dark red blood dyed the sea red. This massacre happened too suddenly. It was so sudden that almost no one could react. The ship slowly sank. Jingyu saw with her own eyes that the woman was sitting on the floating board with a frightened and dazed expression. She looked up and saw with her own eyes. All she saw and heard were screams and shouts. The ship here was attacked by vicious sharks, but Jingyu's ship was unscathed. The sharks were even blocked by Jingyu's ship and took a detour around it. This strange and frightening scene fell into the eyes of the woman. The disheveled woman stared blankly at the boat that Jingyu and Xiao Chen were on. She saw Jingyu standing quietly at the edge of the boat, her golden eyes staring coldly at her. At that moment, she felt as if all the blood in her body had been sucked dry. It's her. The fear in the woman's eyes caused her to tremble uncontrollably, and she looked at Jingyu in disbelief. Strange pupils. Monster. The blood drained from the woman's lips as she stared blankly at Jingyu. She looked like she wanted to cry, but she also wanted to laugh. In the end, she stared blankly at the sea. Behind her, a huge shark bared its sharp white teeth and attacked her. Dark red blood dyed the sea red. The broken pieces of wood and the original ship were completely silent. On the surface of the sea, There were no more cries, no more living people. Everything returned to peace, but it didn't seem to be peaceful at the same time. With so few people, it's not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Jing Yu slowly retracted her cold gaze, and the corners of her mouth curled slightly as she spoke indifferently. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. He glanced sideways at the pile of corpses on the deck and said indifferently, "Throw those down as well. It should be enough." Jing Yu's face darkened. She glared at Xiao Chen and said, "Xiao Chen, if you spoil me like this, what will happen in the future?" Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "You can do whatever you want. I'll kill people, you set fires, I'll rob people." Jing Yu arched her eyebrows and looked at Xiao Chen as she said, "But before that, tell me, how are we going to go back now?" Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He looked around at the vast sea, and only their boat was anchored on the surface of the sea. There were also countless sharks swimming in the sea. The three of them were instantly dumbfounded by this feeling. Chapter 719. The corpses on the ship were completely thrown into the sea to feed the sharks. The monkeys that were locked up were also released, running around on the deck. Xiaobai was very happy. He played with the monkeys very happily. As for the matter of sailing the ship, Xiaobai was very happy. As for how to sail a ship, how could a talent like Jing Yu learn how to sail a ship by herself? She found a large bundle of rope on the ship and jumped directly into the sea. She tied the rope around the shark and then climbed back to the ship, commanding the shark to lead the way. There was no one at the helm of the boat, but it could move quite well, and it was even pulled by a shark. It was simply shocking that people's jaws dropped. Jing Yu sat on the deck of the ship and moved a chair. Xiao Chen was lying down, and Jing Yu was lying on Xiao Chen's chest. One was looking at the sky, while the other was sleeping. The monkeys on the ship were running around, crying from time to time. It sounded like they were in a mountain forest. There was almost no one in this sea area. Jing Yu's ship was moving forward in a straight line without anyone stopping it. Jing Yu was in a daze. She didn't expect that in this series of things, she could control these sharks so skillfully. She felt like she had mastered the method. At this moment, Jing Yu felt like she was in the sea in a trance. Jing Yu felt the rising and falling feeling and listened to the powerful heartbeat from Xiao Chen's chest. Jing Yu's heart was full of peace and comfort. Just when Jing Yu was still sleeping, she suddenly felt something gently touching her face. Jing Yu frowned slightly and buried her face for a while. Then she felt something pressing on her face. Jing Yu opened her eyes unhappily. "You won't even let me have a good sleep." As soon as Jing opened his eyes, he was met with a pair of pitch-black, sparkling eyes. "Xiaobai, what are you doing?" The one lying in front of Jing Yu was Xiaobai. The corners of his mouth curved up as if he was smiling happily. Seeing Jing Yu open her eyes and sit up happily, Jing Yu discovered that Xiaobai was sitting on Xiao Chen's chest. Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen also lowered his head and looked at Jing Yu. Jing Yu blinked and looked at the little guy who reached out and hugged Xiao Chen's neck and her face. She found it funny. This little thing was really, oh. Xiaobai nestled on Xiao Chen's chest with satisfaction and closed his eyes. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows slightly. He raised his hand and hugged the little guy. His body was majestic and his other hand was holding Jing Yu. The three people lying under the setting sun seemed to be reflected in a painting at this moment. It was so peaceful that no one could bear to break it. They walked for a day. When they returned to the island, the sky was already dark. The monkeys had all returned to the mountain. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen stopped the boat by the side. Standing on the boat and listening to the cries of the monkeys, Jing Yu's lips curved up slightly. "They are thanking us and cheering." Jing Yu's heart was filled with tenderness. Xiao Chen stepped forward and hugged Jing Yu's waist. "If we don't cut the weeds, we have to dig up the roots. If we don't cut off the shop that makes monkey brains, these little guys will still be taken away." Xiao Chen hugged Jing Yu and said lightly, "We should also go. Since we are going to leave, let's finish everything first." Jing Yu raised her head slightly and leaned against Xiao Chen as she asked, "What should we do?" "Let's go to 5 Prefectures Bay. We'll leave the rest to the Nether sect." Xiao Chen hugged Jing Yu tightly. Chapter 720. Gazing at the sea, she glanced at Xiao Bai, who was happily playing with a wooden arrow, and said, "What do you plan to do with this little thing?" Hearing this, Jing Yu was slightly taken aback. She tilted her head and looked at the little thing. She slowly frowned and said, "We don't know if we will live or die on this journey. It's not safe to bring him along. After arriving at Wufu Bay, let's find a good family to foster him. I only hope that he will grow up well." "All right." Xiao Chen silently agreed. Jing Yu felt uncomfortable in her heart. She had only been with this little thing for a few days, but she felt so reluctant to part with him. Jing Yu sighed slightly. Leaning on Xiao Chen, her mood was a little unstable. Just as she was thinking about finding a good family to foster him with, she felt someone tugging at her clothes. Looking down slightly, she saw Xiao Bai looking up at Jing Yu. He was holding a wooden arrow in his hand and dragging a longbow as he stood in front of Jing Yu. "What, do you want me to teach you archery?" Jing Yu squatted down and looked at the little thing. Xiao Bai was very happy as he jumped up and down. His sparkling eyes stared at Jing Yu. "Okay, I'll teach you archery." Jing Yu curved her eyes and picked up the longbow. Fortunately, the longbow was not particularly heavy, so Xiao Bai was able to carry it. Although this little thing's body was small, he still had the strength. If he did not have the strength of his arms, how could he jump from tree to tree? Stand up straight and hold it well. On the deck, Jing Yu patiently explained to Xiao Bai how to shoot. Xiao Chen looked at the two figures and slightly narrowed his eyes. He raised his hand and took the bow at the side. He walked down the ship and headed towards the forest to hunt for tonight's dinner. The night was as dark as ink. After eating and drinking to their fill, the two found a comfortable room on the ship to rest. The little thing was addicted to archery practice. After a long time, he finally fell asleep on the blanket at the side. Jing Yu saw that he was sleeping comfortably and did not care. However, Xiao Chen was not happy. He went up and carried the little thing to the room next door. Only then did he feel relieved and come back. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a puzzled expression. "Why did you carry Xiao Bai so far away?" Jing Yu finally had a good bath today. She had jumped into the sea from time to time for so many days. Hearing Jing Yu's question, Xiao Chen calmly raised his eyebrows and said, "Do you want him to see us being intimate?" Jing Yu raised her hand and threw a pillow at him. Her face was red as she scolded, "You pervert!" Xiao Chen easily caught the pillow that Jing Yu threw at him. He walked towards Jing Yu with steady steps. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said, "Will you make me feel like you're actually inviting me?" "Is that so?" As Xiao Chen spoke, he raised his hand and wrapped it around Jing Yu's body. There was a faint smile in his eyes. His pair of dark eyes were deep and filled with deep affection. He looked straight at Jing Yu, causing Jing Yu's face to instantly turn red. She stared at Xiao Chen without saying a word. Under the red candlelight, on this quiet island, the boat docked by the shore was warm and moving. It was a quiet and peaceful night. The world seemed to have fallen into silence. When the first ray of sunlight broke through the surface of the sea, the woman sleeping on the bed slowly opened her eyes. Her slightly trembling eyelashes and her open golden eyes were especially moving. Jing Yu moved her sore body. Her neck was pillowed on Xiao Chen's arm. The big hand that was holding her waist did not loosen in the slightest. Jing Yu patted Xiao Chen's hand and said lazily, "Let go." Chapter 721. Sleep a little longer. Xiao Chen didn't loosen his grip on Jing Yu's hand. Instead, he tightened his grip and rubbed against Jing Yu's head, looking like he didn't want to move. This made Jing Yu squirm uncomfortably. "Stop fooling around, I'm hungry." Jing Yu tilted her head and looked at Xiao Chen from the corner of her eyes. "I didn't even say I was hungry." Xiao Chen propped up his chin in dissatisfaction and leaned over to nibble on Jing Yu's neck. That look of dissatisfaction made Jing Yu laugh out loud. The soft kisses that landed on her neck made Jing Yu shrink her neck and dodge. "Xiao Chen, stop fooling around." Jing Yu helplessly pushed Xiao Chen's head away. She turned around and looked at Xiao Chen's handsome face. He looked like he had just woken up, and his cold, dark eyes were looking at Jing Yu. It was as if there was no one else in his eyes other than Jing Yu. "I'll let you off for today." Xiao Chen slightly lowered his gaze and planted a soft kiss on Jing Yu's lips. He loosened his grip on Jing Yu's waist and sat up with his arms propped up. He stood up and took the clothes by the side to put on his clothes. The weather outside looked good, but the clouds in the east seemed to be piling up. Looking at it, it wasn't going to rain, was it? Jing Yu and Xiao Chen tidied up and prepared to leave. Xiao Bai seemed to be addicted to archery and was having a lot of fun. Jing Yu walked up and squatted down in front of Xiao Bai. She raised her hand to pat Xiao Bai's head and said, "We're leaving. We're going to Wufu Bay. Are you coming with us?" Xiao Bai heard Jing Yu's words and looked at Jing Yu in confusion. He blinked his eyes as if he didn't understand. "If you come with me, you'll have to say goodbye to your friends in the mountain. When you grow up and learn some skills, you'll be able to protect them. No one will dare to hurt them. Are you willing to do that?" Jing Yu pointed at the forest on the island and said to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai seemed to be in a dilemma. He looked at Jing Yu and then at the island, and finally darted into the forest on the island. Jing Yu stood there in a daze as she watched Xiao Bai's figure disappear from her sight. Did he choose not to leave? Jing Yu slowly straightened her body and looked at the dense forest with a slight frown. Xiao Chen also walked over. Just as Jing Yu lowered her head and was about to let Xiao Chen leave, she suddenly heard a long howl coming from the island. It was extremely moving. The forest shook slightly and Xiao Bai's small figure, covered in mud, quickly ran out. He suddenly rushed forward and hugged Jing Yu's leg. His eyes were red as he looked at Jing Yu. His lips moved slightly and a hoarse voice came out of his mouth. "Follow, go." Jing Yu's eyes lit up with surprise as she looked at the little guy hugging her leg tightly. Her eyes were filled with surprise. "What did you say? Say it again." Jing Yu squatted down and hugged Xiao Bai as she spoke. "Go." Xiao Bai held back for a long time before he finally spat out this word. Jing Yu was surprised and happy as she hugged Xiao Bai. At this moment, the joy in her heart surpassed everything else. Xiao Bai had just spoken. He really had spoken. "Okay, come with me. I'll take you with me." Jing Yu stroked Xiao Bai's small head and felt very emotional for a moment. The boat left the beach. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen stood on the boat and rode the waves towards the sea. They looked at the island that was gradually getting further and further away. Chapter 722. Just as the ship was getting further and further away, countless monkeys suddenly jumped out of the island. They appeared on the beach one by one. Some climbed up the reefs and stood up, letting out cries one after another. Xiao Bai lay on the boat and listened with red eyes. In the end, he also called out. The boat moved towards the middle of the sea with the calls coming and going. When the sounds finally disappeared, Xiao Bai also quieted down and quietly nestled in Jing Yu's arms. Jing Yu held a wooden comb and gently combed Xiao Bai's hair. "Xiao Bai, don't be sad," Jing Yu said as she combed Xiao Bai's hair. "One day, I will return. When that time comes, you will be able to use your own abilities to protect this island and your companions. No one will be able to bully you anymore." Xiao Bai raised his head and looked at Jing Yu. His pitch-black eyes sparkled as he nodded heavily at Jing Yu. He opened his mouth and spat out 2 words under Jing Yu's gaze. "Protect, protect." "Yes, protect." Jing Yu's eyes were filled with joy. She helped Xiao Bai tie up his hair. His clean and neat appearance and handsome face made Jing Yu nod in satisfaction. They traveled for a day and a night. The next morning, they finally left the deserted sea area. The sharks were long gone, and Jing Yu and Xiao Chen, who didn't know how to sail, calmly let the boat drift with the wind. At noon the next day, the rain that had been holding back for a day and a night finally came down. The bean-sized raindrops hit the ship. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the other 2 hid in the room and looked at the non-stop rain. They didn't know where the ship would drift to. Jing Yu had nothing to do, so she found a few books to read in the room. Xiao Chen was teaching Xiao Bai swordsmanship. He even volunteered to teach Xiao Bai how to speak. Jing Yu was quite skeptical. With Xiao Chen's taciturn manner, could he really teach Xiao Bai? Forget it, let him do what he wants. Fortunately, there was still something to eat on the boat. Unfortunately, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen didn't know how to cook, and Xiao Bai didn't know how to either. Therefore, They could only roast a few sweet potatoes to eat and fill their stomachs. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier. Jingyu didn't care. She was enjoying the scenery. Just as everyone was doing their own things, they suddenly heard a soft cry. "Help! Is there anyone? Help!" The soft cry was mixed in with the rain. If it weren't for Jingyu and Xiao Chen's sensitive ears, they wouldn't have heard such a soft cry. Jingyu and Xiao Chen listened attentively for more than 10 seconds. Only then did they confirm that someone was calling for help. Jingyu and Xiao Chen stood up at the same time. They took a bamboo hat from the side and put it on their heads. They opened the door and walked to the deck. They saw the small boat floating in the wind and waves. There was a person sitting and a person lying on the boat. When he saw Xiao Chen and Jingyu appear, he repeatedly shouted, "Two chivalrous warriors, please help us. We encountered a wave." The man cupped his hands and shouted to Jingyu and Xiao Chen. Jingyu and Xiao Chen looked at each other and hurriedly lowered the rope. After a few struggles, they finally got the two people on the boat. When they returned to the room, their bodies were soaked. Xiao Bai stood at the door with a longbow in his hand. He looked at the man with a puzzled expression as he carried the two people in. Chapter 723. Put her on the bed. Jingyu tidied up the things and let the man put the woman on the bed. "Please help me. This is my wife. We met with a shipwreck in Zhonghai and the ship was destroyed." The man looked to be around 30 years old and the woman lying on the bed was young and beautiful. Looking at the man's body, he seemed to be a martial artist. "So that's how it is." Jingyu nodded slightly and said, "Big brother, please go outside and change your clothes. I will help your wife change into dry clothes." "Thank you." The man's face was full of gratitude and he walked out of the room. Jingyu helped the woman change her clothes and touched her forehead. She must have fainted because she was too tired. She didn't know if there was anything wrong with her. She wasn't a doctor. Jingyu helped the woman change her clothes and dried her hair. Then she walked out of the room and saw that the man had also changed into clean clothes. "Thank you, benefactors, for saving my life." When the man saw Jingyu walk out, he bowed deeply to Jingyu and Xiao Chen and said, "I, Fong Ying, will repay your kindness with my life in the future." "Big brother Fong, you are too serious. It was just a small matter." Jingyu looked at the man and had a good impression of him. She stepped forward and stood beside Xiao Chen and said, "If it weren't for the two of you, my wife and I would have been buried in the sea." The man sighed deeply and said, "It was my fault for being impatient. I didn't expect the storm to be so heavy. If I had waited 2 days, it wouldn't have been like this." Why was Big Brother Fong in such a hurry to go out to sea? Jingyu asked Fong Ying to sit down and made him a cup of hot tea. "To tell you the truth, I am the person who escorted the goods. Today, I went to Yangzhou to deliver the goods. However, I was too impatient and didn't take into account the weather. I ran into a storm and lost the goods. I almost lost my life." Fong Ying shook his head helplessly. "I see," Jingyu nodded in realization. She finally understood that they were from the escort agency. There were escort agencies on the mainland, such as Nagato Escort Agency. Naturally, there were also escort agencies on the sea. Jingyu understood and nodded. "But why are the two of you here in Zhonghai?" Fong Ying took a sip of the hot tea and asked while looking at Jingyu and Xiao Chen. "Oh, we were going to Wu Fu Bay, but Lu Xing didn't remember the way. The boatman committed suicide by jumping into the sea." Jingyu's expression didn't change at all. Xiao Chen's mouth twitched when he heard that. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. "The boatman jumped into the sea to commit suicide. How dare you say that?" "This?" Fong Ying was slightly taken aback when he heard Jingyu's words. He lowered his head awkwardly and murmured, "No wonder if you don't mind, please let me take over the helm. I know the way back to Wu Fu Bay." Fong Ying smiled at Jingyu. Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard Fong Ying's words. She was getting exactly what she wanted. If she lacked a boatman, she could pick one up along the way. Jingyu and Fong Ying were chatting happily when Xiao Bai ran over and stood in front of Xiao Chen. He tugged on Xiao Chen's sleeve. The way he held the bow and arrow was very cute. Chapter 724. You don't know? Xiao Chen glanced at Xiao Bai and asked coldly. Xiao Bai blinked and nodded. When Xiao Chen saw Xiao Bai nod, he slowly stood up and took the bow from Xiao Bai's hand. He walked to the side and patiently demonstrated. Do you understand now? Xiao Chen asked. Xiao Bai shook his head. Xiao Chen demonstrated again and asked, Do you understand now? This repeated again and again. Fang Ying stood on the side and watched in a daze. Jing Yu helplessly held her forehead. How could he teach people like this? He didn't say a word and just did it? Huh? Is this your child? He's really handsome. Fang Ying laughed loudly and looked at Jing Yu with envy. Jing Yu wanted to say that this wasn't their child, but Xiao Chen had already stood up and said, Yes, his name is Xiao Bai. What a good name. Fang Ying looked at the interaction between Xiao Chen and Xiao Bai with envy. Neither of them said a word to each other, but for some reason, he felt that there was a strong sense of kinship between them. Jing Yu couldn't stand it anymore. She rushed up and pulled Xiao Chen to the side. She squatted down and said carefully to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai nodded and took the bow to the side to practice. Jing Yu stood up straight and stared at Xiao Chen. Do you not know how to speak with that mouth of yours? It's like you're going to die if you say another word. Xiao Chen's face darkened slightly. I'm going inside to check on my wife. Fang Ying said tactfully, then turned around and went into the house. Xiao Chen watched Fang Ying leave and immediately hugged Jing Yu's waist. Jing Yu blushed and gritted her teeth at Xiao Chen, who didn't forget to take advantage of her. She couldn't push him away, so she could only let Xiao Chen hug her and sit on a chair. Xiao Chen, I think it's not safe to bring them along. Jing Yu sat in Xiao Chen's arms and frowned slightly. Wanted posters are everywhere, Don't worry, Xiao Chen hugged Jing Yu and said, he recognized us a long time ago. Recognized? Jing Yu was shocked and stared at Xiao Chen with wide eyes. Nothing. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said, a traveling escort agency is most concerned about such things. How could he not recognize us? However, since he chose not to point it out, he's naturally prepared to play dumb until the end. We don't have to worry. That's true. Jing Yu raised her head and glanced at the room. So what if he knows? Xiao Chen played with Jing Yu's slender fingers and pursed his lips slightly. A small escort agency is nothing to me. Jing Yu's face darkened when she heard this. She raised her hand and poked Xiao Chen's cheek without saying anything. Xiao Chen rubbed Jing Yu's hand as the two sat in the room and chatted. Xiao Chen was really smart. He could shoot the arrow steadily, but he still didn't have enough strength. Therefore, if he couldn't shoot far enough, he could get better with more practice. The heavy rain lasted for the entire afternoon. It only stopped when the sky was dark. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked out of the cabin and smelled the refreshing scent of the rainwater. From the looks of it, how long will it take for us to reach Wu Fu Bay? Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked at the sea as she asked. We'll probably reach tomorrow morning. Fang Ying also walked out and looked around to familiarize herself with the ship. She raised the sails while answering Jing Yu's question. Chapter 725. It's not safe to sail at night. Big Brother Fang, there's no need to rush. It's good to be a little slower. We just need to arrive before noon. Jing Yu nodded slightly. She looked up at Fang Ying and said with a smile. Fang Ying nodded in response. When the sky was completely dark, Fang Ying's wife finally woke up. Jing Yu had to admit that this woman was indeed a very gentle woman. Perhaps it was because her body was weak, she only woke up for a short while and went back to sleep after eating some porridge. Tonight, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen finally had a comfortable meal. Obviously, it wasn't made by the two of them, but by Fang Ying. She was so good at cooking that Jing Yu was filled with envy and jealousy. She eagerly followed behind Fang Ying to help wash the vegetables and so on. Our extremely possessive male lead was instantly unhappy. He stood at the door and watched the two of them talking and laughing. He secretly made up his mind that he would work hard on his culinary skills when he got back. After eating and drinking to their fill, everyone went to sleep. Fortunately, it didn't continue to rain that night. It seemed that tomorrow's weather would be good. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen slept until late in the morning when Xiao Bai woke them up. Xiao Bai, stop messing around. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen slowly opened their eyes and looked at Xiao Bai, who had jumped onto their bed. They frowned helplessly. Xiao Chen's face was so gloomy that he wanted to kill someone. He stared coldly at Xiao Bai, causing the little guy to tremble in fear. Then he neatly threw himself into Jing Yu's arms and didn't look at Xiao Chen anymore. Really? Jing Yu raised her hand and rubbed Xiao Bai's head. She reluctantly got up. Xiao Chen also slowly got up. They hadn't eaten enough meat yesterday, and today, someone had ruined it. Because of the arrival of Fang Ying and his wife, Xiao Bai slept in Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's room. The two of them slept in each other's arms for the entire night. Because of this, Xiao Chen was gloomy the entire night. In the morning, he was woken up by this little guy. How could the 9th emperors not give him any face? When Jing Yu and Xiao Chen left the room, they saw Fang Ying supporting his wife, Shin Bailing, and playing on the deck. Benefactors, you're up? Fang Ying and Shin Bailing turned around and bowed slightly to Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. We've made a fool of ourselves. Jing Yu politely returned the greeting. She looked at the endless blue sky and the rising sun. It was indeed a good day. We'll reach Wufu Bay in a little more than 2 hours, Fang Ying said to Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Do you have any plans? If you're not in a hurry, why don't you come to my residence and have some hot tea? It won't be too late to leave after resting for a while. Jing Yu turned her head slightly to look at Xiao Chen. Since Escort Chief Fang is so kind, we won't refuse. Xiao Chen's expression didn't change as he calmly replied. Huh? That's great, Fang Ying replied. I'll sail the ship to the escort agency's dock. It'll be closer to the residence. I'll leave it to you, Big Brother Fang, Jing Yu replied with a slight smile. Fang Ying was right. In less than 2 hours, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen could already see more and more ships coming and going from the ship. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen returned to their room and changed their clothes. Xiao Chen put on a mask while Jing Yu put on a veil. When the ship docked, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked out. Fang Ying didn't say anything when he saw their appearances. He just smiled and led the way. Most of the escort agency's docks were docked with cargo ships. When Jing Yu and Xiao Chen arrived, they saw all kinds of ships unloading and loading cargo. Chapter 726. Big Brother Fang, we don't want this boat anymore. Since Big Brother Fang is familiar with this place, please help us sell it. Jing Yu walked down the boat and held Xiao Bai's hand. She looked up at the boat behind her and turned to Fang Ying. Ah, that's easy. I'll get someone to sell it. Fang Ying nodded in agreement. He looked around and raised his hand to shout something. Then he saw a skinny man running over. Oh, isn't this escort leader Fang? Why did you call me? The skinny man had a shifty look. His triangular eyes shone brightly as he looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. He smiled and asked Fang Ying. These two guests want to sell this boat. Fang Ying pointed at the boat behind him and said, make sure you sell it cleanly. I'll give you 20% of the money. The man looked at the boat behind him and said to Fang Ying with a smile, Escort leader Fang, Wufu Bay hasn't been peaceful recently. Someone powerful has come. You should be careful. The man looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen meaningfully. What's there to be afraid of? Who dares to touch my benefactor in Wufu Bay? Fang Ying did not seem to care as she shouted angrily. Her voice was so loud that it did not seem to be for the man to hear, but for other people to hear. For example, the few people who had walked away after Fang Ying finished speaking. Yes. So it's escort leader Fang's benefactor. My apologies. The skinny man was slightly taken aback. He nodded and bowed, which made Jing Yu's eyes twitch. All right, when you're done, come find me at Liuhe Escort Agency, Fang Ying said and continued walking with Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others. Fang Ying's mansion was just beside the Liuhe Escort Agency. It was a simple but exquisite courtyard. The news of Fang Ying's ship being wrecked at sea had spread. Now that the two of them had returned safely, the servants of the Fang residence were overjoyed. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen sat for a short while and understood the origin of the 5 prefectures bay. The 5 residences bay got its name from the 5 residences within the bay, and one of them was the Fang residence of the Fang clan. The 5 residences were scattered across the bay, and a long time ago, these 5 residences dominated this part of the sea, and almost no one dared to disturb them. However, the balance of power between the 5 prefectures was broken in the end. Because of women, because of wealth, because of the invasion of foreign enemies, 2 of the 5 prefectures were massacred. In the end, the remaining 3 prefectures finally joined forces to resist the invaders and successfully held onto their own bloodline. It was said that the battle that year had always been a pain in the hearts of the 3 prefectures. The 3 middle prefectures of the 5 prefectures Bay continued to fight against each other, but once the invaders arrived, the 3 prefectures would definitely join forces to fight against the invaders. Jingyu sighed as she listened to the past of the 5 prefectures Bay. Indeed, there was strength in numbers. My 2 benefactors, please rest in this residence for a while. I still have some matters to attend to in the escort agency, so I'll make a trip there first. Fang Ying said to Jingyu and Xiaochen. After instructing the guards to serve them well, he left in a hurry. Jingyu sat in her seat and frowned slightly. She had heard the skinny man's words just now. Jingyu had heard Jingyu. He said that there was a powerful person in the 5 prefectures Bay. Chapter 727. Could it be that Nailin Yu and the others had caught up? Jingyu and Xiaochen were very confused. Shen Bailing warmly welcomed Jingyu and Xiaochen. Xiaochen stayed for a while before standing up and saying, "I need to go out." Jingyu looked at Xiaochen in confusion before slowly nodding her head. "Go ahead." Jingyu knew what Xiaochen wanted to do. Were the people from the Nether sect here? Xiaochen left the Fang mansion while Jingyu brought Xiao Bai around the Fang mansion. The Fang mansion was very boring. Shen Bailing accompanied Jingyu for a while and felt that her body wasn't feeling well. Naturally, Jingyu didn't let Shen Bailing accompany her any longer and told her to rest. In the courtyard of the Fang mansion, Jingyu sat in the courtyard and looked at the wooden planks on the pavilion with boredom. She counted how many planks there were. Xiao Bai was running around the courtyard and jumping around before sitting down quietly beside Jingyu. Sigh. It's so boring. Jingyu rubbed Xiao Bai's head in boredom. Xiao Bai rubbed against Jingyu's hand and leaned against Jingyu without saying anything. Jingyu stretched and her heart skipped a beat. She looked down at Xiao Bai and said, "How about I take you out to play?" Jingyu said as she touched her belt. Fortunately, she still had some money. Xiao Bai's eyes lit up with joy when he heard this. He blinked his shining eyes and looked at Jingyu as he nodded vigorously. "Let's go, let's go." Jingyu immediately stood up happily. She tidied herself up a little and put on her veil. Then, she held Xiao Bai's hand and swaggered onto the street. The streets of 5 prefectures Bay could be said to be very lively. Since it was a bay area, there was naturally a lot of seafood. There were also quite a lot of carts coming and going. Jingyu was very impressed by these little things. Many of the dishes that she had never seen before directly attracted the gluttonous worm in Jingyu's stomach. As soon as Jingyu and Xiao Bai entered the street, they began to sweep through the streets. Xiao Bai was very curious about this pair. The 2 walked and stopped to talk and laugh. When the passers-by saw this, they all thought that this was a mother and son pair. Xiao was born handsome and his pair of blinking black eyes made people's hearts beat faster. Along the way, they attracted quite a lot of attention. The 2 ate and played along the way. Finally, they were tired and found a tea house to sit down. In the tea house, the storyteller was talking nonsense. Jingyu was eating melon seeds and listening with interest. Just as the story ended, the storyteller took a sip of tea and began to talk again. Speaking of which, the most popular thing now is the 9th Emperor's and his imperial concubine with different pupils. The storyteller had a small mustache. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Each and every one of them looked at the storyteller curiously. The 9th Emperor's is an extraordinary person in our Tokyo. But who would have thought that the 9th Emperor's brought back a woman who can tame wolves? We thought that she was just an ordinary woman, but who would have thought that this woman's identity is even more extraordinary? What's so great about it? Someone below asked. The storyteller's eyes lit up when he heard that. This woman is not some wild child. But she's the eldest legitimate granddaughter of the Prime Minister's manor. Speaking of this, We have to talk about the first master of the Prime Minister's manner. The storyteller exaggerated all kinds of things with eloquence. Jingyu sat on the seat and slightly lowered her eyes. Chapter 728. Following this, Jingyu turned her head and gazed out of the window into the distance. She was lost in her thoughts. Xiaobai sat beside Jingyu and listened to the storyteller's words. He was lost in thought and his small eyes didn't even blink. The story of the 9th emperors and the woman with different pupils had long been known by everyone. The versions that were passed around were all different. The people who were listening had already heard of it, but they were still interested and happily listened. From time to time, someone would throw the silver pieces in their hands into a jar on the table they were sitting on. Every once in a while, someone would come up and collect the silver pieces. This is incredible. That mysterious hidden clan actually said that the 9th imperial concubine has different pupils. Do you guys know what different pupils are? When the storyteller said that he was nervous, everyone present widened their eyes and looked at the storyteller nervously. Those are different pupils. They're like monsters and their eyes can change color. The people below all widened their eyes and their eyes were filled with shock. Jingyu's lips curled up in a mocking smile. She propped her chin up and didn't show any expression. However, Xiaobai, who was beside her, suddenly reached out and grabbed Jingyu's arm. His small face was filled with seriousness. Jingyu was startled by this little fellow's actions and looked at him in confusion. "Let's go." Xiaobai stared at Jingyu for a long time and moved his mouth as he spoke. "Silly boy, what are you afraid of?" Jingyu's eyes revealed a faint smile. She understood Xiaobai's meaning. This fellow had heard the storyteller talk about how the people with different pupils were chased away and how they were hunted down. His eyes were filled with anxiety as he looked at Jingyu. Xiaobai blinked and looked at Jingyu. Jingyu arched her eyebrows and smiled, but she didn't say anything. The storyteller wantonly talked about how powerful the people with different pupils were and how they harmed people. It was said that they killed people in so-and-so places and wolves were wreaking havoc in so-and-so places. Some of the men who were listening below were furious, and they shouted that they had to destroy the other pupil, or else they wouldn't be at ease. Xiaobai's pitch-black eyes were filled with anger. Jingyu raised her hand and pressed on Xiaobai's head. Her expression was indifferent. Xiaobai blinked his eyes and looked at Jingyu. He raised his head slightly and finally lowered it unwillingly. "Hugh." Xiaobai raised his head and looked at Jingyu. Suddenly he lay down on Jingyu's lap and looked up at Jingyu. There was a faint light in his eyes as he said, "Like?" Jingyu's heart trembled violently. She looked into Xiaobai's pure eyes, and a part of her heart suddenly softened. She raised her hand and placed it on Xiaobai's back. The corner of her mouth curled up as she said, "I also like Xiaobai a lot." "Oh." Xiaobai grinned. He buried his head in Jingyu's lap and rubbed against it. Just as Jingyu and Xiaobai were having fun, Jingyu suddenly felt that the noisy tea house had quieted down. Jingyu raised her head in confusion and looked around. Finally, her gaze landed on the entrance of the tea house. "Ignorant storyteller, go, cut off his tongue for this young master." The man who stepped forward was dressed in black and stood there quietly. His black hair was draped over his shoulders, and his eyes were extremely seductive. His words were clearly cold, but when they came out of his mouth, there was an inexplicable charm to them. Chapter 729. When Jingyu's gaze landed on the devastatingly beautiful face, she was instantly dumbfounded. "Isn't this Hellion Theo? Why is he here?" Jingyu stared blankly at Hellion Theo, who was standing at the entrance of the tea house. He was still as devilishly handsome and dressed in black. For a moment, Jingyu thought that Hellion Theo was dressed in red. Yes. The two people behind Hellion Theo had cold expressions on their faces as they stepped forward and captured the storyteller. The surrounding people all widened their eyes in horror. The storyteller was shocked by Hellion Theo's stance and looked at Hellion Theo in horror. "You? How can you be so unreasonable? You want to reason with this young master?" Hellion Theo stared coldly at the storyteller as his lips curled into an indifferent smile. The moment Hellion Theo smiled, All the women in the tea house paled in comparison. There were even some men who looked at Helly and Theo with infatuation. When Jingyu saw this scene, she immediately spat out a mouthful of blood in her heart and cursed, "What a devil! Since you want to reason, this young master will explain it to you properly," Helly and Theo said as he calmly sat down on a chair. He squinted his peach blossom eyes and asked the storyteller, "This young master wants to ask you, have you seen the 9th emperors and his imperial concubine with different pupils? Have you personally experienced all the things that you just described? What evidence do you have to prove that the 9th imperial concubine killed people and commanded wolves? Don't worry, if you can answer me, this young master won't cut off your tongue today. If your answer is wrong, not only will this young master want your tongue, this young master will also want your head." As soon as Helly and Theo finished speaking, the entire room fell into silence. The storyteller's face instantly turned pale. He felt that he had been wronged. Who would reason with a storyteller like this? Which one of these storytellers didn't spout nonsense like a torrent? How could he be so calculative about the contents of the book? This made the storyteller complain incessantly. He wanted to cry out for injustice, but he didn't know where to start. Everyone's expression was also very strange. "What's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything?" Helly and Theo looked at the storyteller with his chin in his hand and said with a mocking gaze, "Aren't you very talkative? Why aren't you saying anything now?" "But, my lord, this lowly one knows his mistake." The storyteller looked at Helly and Theo and said Helly and Theo's, "Lord, please, tell me what you want me to say, I will say it. My lord, please spare me, this lowly one relies on his tongue. Peh. Helly and Theo smiled disdainfully, stood up and said coldly, "Cut off his tongue." My lord. Helly and Theo turned around to leave without hesitation. The storyteller's eyes were suddenly filled with horror and he struggled desperately. The people around them all looked terrified and turned their heads away, not daring to look. However, no one dared to step forward. The most uncontrollable thing in this world is other people's mouths. Just as the storyteller's mouth was pried open, a faint voice suddenly sounded from the crowd, attracting everyone's attention. Helly and Theo frowned when he heard this. As if unhappy with being disturbed, the crowd slowly opened up a path. The woman in black and purple clothes slowly stood up. Her black hair was casually tied up and she wore a black veil on her face, revealing a pair of dark eyes that looked indifferently at Helly and Theo. Chapter 730. Even if you can kill one person, you won't be able to shut everyone's mouths. Why bother? Jingyu's eyes curved slightly as she walked towards Helly and Theo. Xiaobai stood beside Jingyu and blinked as he looked at Helly and Theo. The instant Helly and Xiao turned his head to look, he was instantly stunned. That petite figure stood in the middle of the crowd, that pair of black eyes still had the same expression. In that instant, it was as if he saw a girl smiling at him like a flower, so moving that it tugged at his heartstrings. That's true. After being stunned for a moment, just when everyone thought that something was going to happen to the woman, Helly and Theo suddenly spoke up. "Tell him to scram." Helly and Xiao's gaze shifted away from Jingyu. He narrowed his eyes and glanced at the storyteller whose face was pale from fright. He said, "I'll spare your life today. Remember, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. If there's a next time, I won't show mercy." "Thank you, my lord." The storyteller was trembling all over. He frantically kowtowed to Helly and Xiao and then to Jingyu. Then, he ran away in a panic without knowing where he was going. Jingyu calmly raised her eyebrows and looked Helly and Theo up and down. "Why aren't you wearing red clothes?" Jingyu blinked as she looked at Helly and Theo. Helly and Theo's face darkened when he heard this. Jingyu had asked him the same question before, and now she was asking him the same question again. "Because I'm ugly." Helly and Theo stared at Jingyu and replied. "You have to believe me. With your face, you'll look good in anything." Jingyu looked at Helly and Theo with a serious expression. "Are you praising me?" The corners of Helly and Xiao's mouth curled up as he looked at Jingyu in a joyful mood. Jingyu's face darkened. She glared at Helly and Theo and said, Can't you tell that I'm jealous? Helly and Theo's face darkened again. Get out of the way. If there's nothing else, I'm going back. Jing Yu glared at Helly and Theo and spoke rudely. The guards behind Helly and Theo were completely dumbfounded by the situation in front of them. This woman who came out of nowhere not only criticized their master's clothes, but also spoke so rudely. What was strange was that their master's strange, with his strange temper, to get angry. This was too scary. Where am I going to find you? When Helly and Theo heard Jing Yu's words, his expression froze. He glanced at Xiao Bai, who was standing beside Jing Yu, and a strange expression flashed across his face. Liuhe Escort Agency, Fong Residence. Jing Yu glanced at Helly and Theo, took Xiao Bai's hand, and walked around Helly and Theo. Under the strange gazes of so many people, they walked out of the tea house. The surrounding onlookers stared blankly with their eyes wide open. They had no idea what was going on. Helly and Theo looked at Jing Yu's departing figure and narrowed his eyes slightly. Then he smiled faintly and said, Mu Yu was right. Come out more often and you'll always find some unexpected surprises. What? The guard standing beside Helly and Theo was slightly stunned. He looked at Helly and Theo and asked, Nothing. Let's go back to the inn. Helly and Theo narrowed his eyes and said, Prepare a generous gift tomorrow. I heard that Chief Fong Ying is back. We should pay him a visit. The guard bowed in response. He was completely confused by his master's actions. Chapter 731. When Jing Yu returned to the Fong residence, Shen Bailing and Fong Ying were in the residence. When they heard that Jing Yu had gone out by herself, they were a little worried. Now that they saw that Jing Yu had returned safely, they heaved a sigh of relief. In the blink of an eye, the sky had turned dark. Xiao Qin, who had gone out, had also returned. This was not much different from when he went out. After Xiao Qin came back, he did not say what he was going to do. Jing Yu was too lazy to ask. She washed up and went to bed. After a good night's sleep, Jing Yu was still asleep when she was woken up by the clamor outside. What's going on outside? Jing Yu put on her clothes and opened the door. A servant girl standing by the door bowed slightly to Jing Yu and said, Young Master Helion has come to the Fong residence. Master and Madam are receiving him in the front hall. We apologize for disturbing the two guests. It's fine. Jing Yu waved her hand slightly, but she was speechless. Young Master Helion? She did not need to use her brain to know that it must be Helly Theo, that fool. Xiao Qin also walked to Jing Yu's side. When he heard the servant girl's words, he raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Jing Yu. Let's go and take a look. Jing Yu said, then turned back to her room to freshen up before heading to the main hall. Before she entered the hall, she heard the voices inside. There was a group of people standing at the door. Jing Yu was quite familiar. Weren't they the people Helly and Theo had brought over yesterday? As for the conversation in the room, I've long heard that Escort Fong's wife is the #1 beauty in 5 Residence Bay. Seeing you today, you are indeed beautiful. Jing Yu, who was standing at the door, was in a mess the moment he said those words, which were full of teasing and lust. There was a moment of strange silence in the hall. Jing Yu and Xiao Qin walked in. Jing Yu looked up and saw the man in red sitting in the guest seat. He had a big red flower on his head. Jing Yu would recognize him even if he turned into ashes. In today's world, there was someone with such a style. Who else could it be but Mu Yu, young Prince Mu? Tell me, who else could it be? Jing Yu looked at Mu Yu, who was sitting next to Helly and Theo, with a black face. His flowery clothes, the big red flower on his head, and the way Mu Yu stared at Shen Bailing, unable to take his eyes off her, Jing Yu could almost imagine what would happen if Fong Ying had a knife in her hand. She would definitely hack this person to death in a matter of minutes. Brother Fong. Jing Yu took a deep breath and walked over, breaking the strange silence in the room. Our 2 benefactors are here. When Fong Ying saw Jing Yu and Xiao Qin, the gloomy expression on her face faded a little. She stood up and greeted them with a smile. Jing Yu smiled. She felt deeply helpless when she saw Fong Ying shielding Shen Bailing behind her. She turned to look at Helly and Theo and Mu Yu. She couldn't understand why Hellion Theo would bring this guy out with him. Miss Jingyu, long time no see. Greetings. Muyu's eyes lit up when he saw Jingyu walk in. He was really glowing. He looked at Jingyu excitedly and bowed politely to her. Before Jingyu could say anything, he immediately said, Miss Jingyu, this king really had a hard time looking for you. How come you're not in the northern pastoral anymore in the blink of an eye? This king has already prepared a generous gift and is ready to officially marry you. Muyu said with deep affection. Jingyu's face instantly darkened. Chapter 732. Xiao Chen, who was standing behind Jingyu, had a completely gloomy look in his eyes. He raised his hand and pulled Jingyu into his embrace. His gloomy face was filled with murderous intent as he stared at Muyu and said, Young Prince Mu, do you not want to keep your mouth and eyes anymore? Muyu's words instantly stopped as he stared blankly at Xiao Chen. He didn't have the guts to spit out the words he had been holding in. He looked at Xiao Chen and smiled embarrassedly as he cursed in his heart. Wasn't it just something that could be used against him? If Xiao Chen revealed that he had erectile dysfunction, then he would lose all his face. Muyu laughed as he thought about it. He looked at Xiao Chen happily and said, Ninth Master Xiao, long time no see. You finally won the heart of a beauty. Congratulations, congratulations. Jingyu and Xiao Chen looked at Muyu as if they were looking at an idiot. Their faces darkened slightly. Fang Ying's mouth also twitched. She really couldn't understand where this person came from. Long time no see, Ninth Master Xiao, Hellion Theo said indifferently as he raised his chin and looked at Xiao Chen with narrowed eyes. Xiao Chen looked coldly at Hellion Theo and didn't say anything. The two of them looked at each other in silence. Jingyu, who was in Xiao Chen's embrace, felt the temperature drop inch by inch and trembled violently. Why did the two of them become so cold when they collided? Why did you come here? Jingyu couldn't stand it anymore. She looked up at Hellion Theo and broke the strange atmosphere. I came here for you. When Hellion Theo heard Jingyu's words, he turned his gaze to Jingyu. His originally aggressive gaze was instantly retracted when he looked at Jingyu. Looking at the gentle expression on his face, the difference was too big. Listen to the words he just said. I came here for you. Our ninth emperor's exploded in an instant. His gloomy gaze looked as if he wanted to rush up and tear Hellion Theo's mouth apart. Your northern pastoral finally made a move? Jingyu's words made her feel a strong sense of danger. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Hellion Theo with a dangerous gaze. A little. Jingyu's eyes. Yes. Hellion Xiu nodded slightly. What are you guys talking about? Muyu stood at the side and listened for a long time, but he didn't understand what they were talking about. He looked at Hellion Theo in confusion, then looked at Jingyu and asked. Jingyu's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Muyu and said with a strange expression, Don't tell me that he is the leader of your northern pastoral group this time. Jingyu looked at Muyu strangely as she spoke, causing Muyu's hair to stand on end. His heart trembled slightly. Could it be that Miss Jingyu has taken a liking to me? Is she trying to flirt with me with her eyes? At this thought, Muyu's face turned red with excitement. He looked at Jingyu excitedly and blinked his eyes. Yes. When Hellion Theo heard Jingyu's question, his expression became strange. He gritted his teeth and spat out this word. In that instant, Jingyu felt as if there were 10,000 words galloping in her heart. She turned to look at Muyu, who was blinking his eyes like he was having a stroke. Her expression was so dark that she wanted to kill someone. Chapter 733. Young Prince Mu, are you blind? Jingyu asked through gritted teeth as she glared at Muyu. Muyu was stunned when he heard Jingyu's words. He let out a string of strange noises, which made everyone lose their desire to talk to him. They all turned around and found a chair to sit down on. What's wrong? Are you done talking? Muyu asked in confusion when he saw that everyone had dispersed. Everyone was either drinking tea or looking up at the sky, but no one paid any attention to him. Muyu was confused. He turned his gaze to Shen Bailing and was about to speak when Fang Ying suddenly stood up and pulled Shen Bailing aside. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. Please take your time and chat. After Fang Ying finished speaking, he didn't wait for them to speak and directly pulled his wife away. Mu Yu was left in a daze. He blinked his eyes and asked, "This? I remember this is the Fang residence, right? Why did the owner leave?" Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and Helian Theo all looked at Mu Yu as if they were looking at an idiot. Why did he leave? Wasn't it you who scared him away? Damn, this was the first time they had seen such a talent. He actually dared to flirt with someone's wife in front of their husband and even had a covetous look on his face. Jing Yu was very curious. How did Mu Yu live to this age? He actually didn't get beaten to death. Fang Ying's departure was a good thing for Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others. After all, there were some things that they couldn't talk about with Fang Ying around. Fang Ying obviously understood this, so he left without hesitation and left this space for Jing Yu and the others to talk. How did you know we were here? Jing Yu picked up the tea on the table and took a sip before asking. We don't know. When Helian Theo heard Jing Yu's words, he pursed his lips and said, "It was an accident that I came here. It was also an accident that I met you guys." Jing Yu looked at Helian Theo with a puzzled expression. Helian Theo held his forehead helplessly and said, "Mu Yu has never seen the sea before. Since we're leading the team, we have to take a look at the seaside." Then, Helian Theo paused. This king wants to see the sea. Naturally, he will choose an excellent spot. Mu Yu said excitedly, "I've long heard that the 5 Prefectures Bay is full of beauties. This king will definitely come and take a look. I was right to come here." Jing Yu's face suddenly darkened. She looked at Mu Yu strangely and said, "So, where was your original route?" "Straight into the Roman forest." Helian Theo narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "As expected." Jing Yu lowered her head and curled her lips coldly. "I really don't know what's so good about this forest." Mu Yu sighed faintly and said, "Instead of enjoying the beautiful spring scenery, why go to the forest and catch people with different pupils? Don't you think it's too boring?" Jing Yu looked at Mu Yu strangely and asked hesitantly, "Don't you know who the person with different pupils is?" "I know." When Mu Yu heard Jing Yu's question, he raised his head and replied loudly, "Isn't it the Tokyo's 9th imperial concubine? I heard that she's also called Jing Yu. She has the same name as you, huh?" Chapter 734. Mu Yu said smoothly as he laughed loudly and pointed at Jing Yu. After he finished speaking, he suddenly saw Xiao Chen, who was sitting silently at the side. His smile froze as he looked at Xiao Chen and then at Jing Yu. Then the expression on her face changed rapidly. She opened her mouth wide and pointed at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen in disbelief. Then she jumped up from her seat and jumped and spun around with her head in her hands as if she had gone crazy. Jing Yu stared dumbfoundedly at Mu Yu's series of changes. There was only one thought in her mind. It's over. This little prince has probably gone crazy from the shock. You're the 9th emperors of the Tokyo. Mu Yu took a deep breath as he pointed at Xiao Chen. After that, he pointed at Jing Yu and said, You're the 9th imperial concubine of the Tokyo? Jing Yu? Don't we look alike? Jing Yu calmly raised her brows as she looked at Mu Yu. Clang. Mu Yu sat down on the floor and looked at Jing Yu in a daze. Then he looked at Xiao Chen and finally at Helian Theo. Helian Theo calmly glanced at Mu Yu before he picked up his teacup and took a sip. His expression instantly made Mu Yu explode. Helian Theo, do you know that they are the 9th emperors of the Tokyo and the 9th imperial concubine? Mu Yu instantly jumped up and glared at Helian Theo. Don't you know it yourself? Helian Theo ignored Mu Yu's outburst and said faintly. How would I know? Mu Yu opened his mouth to deny it. However, after he finished speaking, he suddenly realized that he really did know. He had just called them 9th Master Xiao and Jing Yu. But he didn't freaking think of this. Jing Yu looked at Mu Yu's expression and laughed in her heart. This was the first time she had seen someone with such a long reaction time. Mu Yu was quite conflicted as he walked around in a circle. Then, he deeply frowned and muttered to himself, "Why didn't I think of it? Ninth Master Xiao is the ninth emperor's, and the ninth emperor's sweetheart is Jingyu." Muyu turned around again and said, "Tokyo is the ninth emperor's and the ninth imperial concubine with different pupils. This person can't have really gone crazy, right?" Jingyu looked at Muyu and asked Xiao Chen with the corner of her mouth twitching. Xiao Chen was silent the entire time. He stared at Muyu with eyes full of killing intent. "Alright, this guy's vinegar jar hadn't been picked up yet. Wait, since you are the ninth imperial concubine, what about the other pupils?" Muyu paused and looked at Jingyu curiously. "I don't see anything different about you." "Oh." Muyu looked at Jingyu curiously. Jingyu's pair of black eyes instantly turned golden when Muyu finished speaking. "Now, do you see it?" Jingyu looked at Muyu calmly. Muyu looked at Jingyu's pair of golden eyes, dumbfounded. Jingyu looked at Muyu's dazed appearance and the corner of her mouth curled up in a mocking smile. "This person is probably going to call out to catch a monster in the next second, right? Beautiful. Truly beautiful." Just as Jingyu had this thought, she saw Muyu walk towards Jingyu in a daze. His eyes were filled with amazement as he looked at Jingyu's eyes and said, "There are actually such beautiful eyes in this world." Jingyu looked at Muyu as if she had seen a ghost. Her face was filled with a strange expression. Chapter 735. Miss Jingyu, this king has decided. Just as Jingyu had yet to recover from Muyu's strange reaction, Muyu's sudden shout attracted the attention of Xiao Chen and Helian Theo. They looked at Muyu in confusion, not knowing what was going on. "From today onwards, I will protect you." Muyu looked at Jingyu seriously and said, "These people are blind. They don't know how to appreciate such beautiful eyes, and they even want to kill a little girl. This is too much." Jingyu looked at Muyu in a daze. When she heard his righteous words, the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. "You speak as if you don't want to do that." Sigh. "What a pity. Miss Jingyu, why did you marry the ninth empress?" Muyu looked at Jingyu with grief and indignation. "If you marry me, I will definitely keep you by my side and admire you. You are really too beautiful. Admire your grandpa." Xiao Chen looked at Muyu with a gloomy face. His murderous aura was rising inch by inch, and Jingyu was very suspicious. Would Xiao Chen suddenly rush up and chop Muyu to death? "Don't tell me. Aren't you afraid?" Jingyu's golden eyes flickered slightly. She looked at Muyu curiously and said, "They said that I am a monster. What are you afraid of?" Muyu looked at Jingyu with a drooling face and said, "If I can marry a wife with different pupils, I will be the envy of the world." Jingyu's mouth twitched violently. She looked at Muyu's glowing eyes and his drooling face, which made Jingyu shrink back slightly. This guy really didn't take his medicine. Not only was his behavior different from others, but his thoughts were also very strange. Bang! Just as Jingyu was cursing in her heart, the teacup in Xiao Chen's hands suddenly shattered. Jingyu and Helian Theo looked on in horror as Xiao Chen viciously punched Muyu in the stomach at the fastest speed possible. Ouch! Bang! In a short 3 seconds, Muyu, who was standing in front of Jingyu, was knocked to the ground by Xiao Chen's punch. He held his stomach and curled up on the ground like a roasted lobster. He couldn't even cry out in pain. "Do you feel better now?" Xiao Chen coldly rotated his wrist. His pair of cold eyes stared at Muyu, who was lying at his feet. The coldness in his eyes didn't recede in the slightest. Cough. Helian Theo finally came back to his senses. He calmly stood up and looked at Xiao Chen as he said, "I haven't seen the 9 emperors in action for a long time. I didn't expect them to be so ruthless." When Xiao Chen heard Helian Theo's words, he slightly tilted his head and looked at Helian Theo. He didn't even bother to say anything. He turned around and walked towards Jingyu. He stretched out his hand towards Jingyu and said, "We'll leave in the afternoon for the Roman forest." Xing Air sent news that Shengguan Linglan and him are about to reach the forest. Lan Lan sent news? Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard this. "Yes." Xiao Chen nodded in response. "Then you guys?" Jingyu turned her head to look at Helian Theo and Muyu. Xiao Qin indifferently glanced at Helian Theo and said, "Why care about them?" After speaking, he pulled Jingyu away, leaving Helian Theo standing there. He raised his eyebrows slightly and didn't say anything. He lowered his head and looked at Muyu, who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead. His face turned cold. He gave him a disdainful kick and said, "Stop pretending. No one cares about you." Chapter 736. Sob sob sob. Miss Jingyu is too cruel. Muyu raised her head with tears in her eyes. Helian Xiu's face darkened even more when he saw her look as if she was about to die. Why did Miss Jingyu get married? It wasn't easy for me to fall in love with a girl. Sigh. Muyu sighed bitterly. He slowly got up and looked at Helian Theo. When he saw Helian Theo's beautiful face, his expression changed again. Helian, look at us. I'm not married and you're not married. Why don't we make do and I marry you? Muyu looked at Helian Theo with a flattering expression. When he said this, he rubbed his hands and looked at Helian Theo with a grin. Helian Theo turned to look at Muyu. His beautiful peach blossom eyes slowly narrowed as he stared at Muyu. Muyu also looked at Helian Theo. Then, in the next second, ouch! Bang! Helian Theo kicked Muyu in the stomach without hesitation. Muyu's red figure flew out in an instant and smashed into the table and chair. After that, Helian Theo turned and left without looking at Muyu. Still want to marry? Young Prince Mu? Helian Theo's faint voice sounded. Muyu clutched his stomach and rolled on the ground like a dead dog. Helian Theo, you really did it? It hurts. Muyu coughed and rubbed his stomach. Helian Theo's kick was real. Unlike Xiao Chen's earlier mercy, this kick made Muyu groan. Helian Theo coldly pursed his lips and walked toward the door without saying another word. Xiao Chen and Jingyu said that they were going to leave, so naturally, they didn't have time to stay. After they left the front hall, they went back to their room to pack their things. Xiao Bai stood in the courtyard and practiced archery. His small body warmed Jingyu's heart. Xiao Chen. Jingyu raised her voice and called out to Xiao Chen. She frowned at Xiao Bai and said worriedly, "Xiao Bai can't come with us. Why don't we leave him at Feng Manor and let Brother Feng take care of him? I've asked, and sister-in-law Shin's health isn't good. The two of them haven't been able to have a child." Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Bai's small body. He said, "Being able to stay in Feng Manor can be considered as being able to protect him. Feng Ying's people are trustworthy." Then, let's go talk to Brother Feng? Jingyu was very reluctant, but this was the only thing she could do. Let's go. Xiao Chen and Jingyu really did go to the front courtyard. In the courtyard, Feng Ying was making tea and talking. His harmonious appearance made Jingyu and Xiao Chen's hearts tremble. If they could be like this many years later, they would definitely be very happy. Why have our two benefactors come? When Feng Ying and Shen Bailing saw Jingyu and Xiao Chen, they both stood up and nodded at Jingyu and Xiao Chen. "Brother Feng, we're here to say goodbye." Jingyu nodded at Feng Ying and Shen Bailing and said, "We've troubled you for many days. Thank you for your help. Right now, we have more important things to do, so we've come to say goodbye to brother and sister-in-law." "You're leaving just like that?" When Shen Bailing heard that Jingyu and Xiao Chen were about to leave, her eyes widened. She said worriedly, "Is everything all right?" "Sister-in-law, don't worry. We're just going to see a few friends." Jingyu smiled at Shen Bailing and said, "The journey will be difficult. My husband and I want to ask you two for a favor. We hope you two can agree." Chapter 737. Benefactor, please speak your mind. Feng Ying will help if I can. When Feng Ying heard Jingyu say that she had something to do, she didn't even think before raising her hand to agree. She looked at Jingyu with a determined expression, which made Jingyu laugh involuntarily. It wasn't much of a favor, but she wanted to repay it with her life. "We want to leave Xiao Bai at Wufu Bay. Please take care of him for us." Jingyu looked at Feng Ying and pursed her lips slightly. When Jingyu finished speaking, Feng Ying and Shen Bailing looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chen in shock. Their eyes were full of confusion. Jingyu had already expected such a reaction from them. She sighed slightly and said, "To be honest, we picked up this child on a deserted island. Xiaobai is the name my husband gave him. When we first met him, he was with a monkey. He didn't know what people said and didn't know what people were like. We pitied him, so we took him with us. Now the two of us are going somewhere far away. It is really inconvenient to take such a young child with us." Jing Yu pursed her lips slightly and explained. Shen Bailing didn't understand the inconvenience in her words, but Fang Ying understood Jing Yu's meaning. If Xiaobai followed Jing Yu and Xiaochen, it was indeed not safe. Thinking of this, Fang Ying frowned slightly. If Xiaobai is willing to stay, we naturally won't refuse and will definitely treat him well. However, have you asked the child? Is he willing to stay? Fang Ying hesitated for a moment before asking. Go and talk to the child. Jing Yu pursed her lips and replied. Fang Ying nodded slightly and returned to the courtyard with Jing Yu. Xiaobai seemed to be tired. He was holding a teacup and drinking water. When he saw Jing Yu and Xiaochen return, he immediately ran over happily. He looked up at Jing Yu and Xiaochen and smiled with curved eyes. Xiaobai. Jing Yu squatted down and raised her hand to wipe the sweat from Xiaobai's forehead. Xiaochen raised his hand and patted Xiaobai's head without saying anything. We are going somewhere far away. Can you stay here and live with brother Fang and sister-in-law Xin in the future? Jing Yu looked at Xiaobai and asked tentatively. When Xiaobai heard Jing Yu's words, he was slightly taken aback and looked up at Fang Ying and Shen Bailing. He then turned his head to look at Xiaochen. Finally his gaze fell on Jing Yu. Suddenly he threw himself into Jing Yu's arms. His small body trembled. When Jing Yu didn't react, he began to cry loudly. His cries shocked Jing Yu to the core. Wah wah, don't want me, wah wah. Xiaobai, who was crying miserably in Jing Yu's arms, hugged Jing Yu's neck tightly and refused to let go. Fang Ying and Shen Bailing couldn't bear to watch and turned their heads away. You don't want to go. Xiaobai sobbed and hugged Jing Yu tightly, refusing to let go. Xiaobai. Jing Yu raised her hand to pat Xiaobai's head. At this moment, she suddenly wanted to keep Xiaobai by her side. It was just life and death. What was there to be afraid of? Xiaochen stood behind Jing Yu and placed his hand on her shoulder. Jing Yu raised her head slightly to look at Xiaochen. She felt a little sad, but she let go slightly. Xiaobai's pitch-black eyes were filled with tears as he looked up at Xiaochen. Xiaochen squatted down and held Xiaobai's shoulder. He looked at Xiaobai expressionlessly and asked, Tell me, why did you practice archery? Xiaobai blinked his watery eyes and looked at Xiaochen in confusion. He seemed to be thinking very carefully because of Xiaochen's question. Chapter 738. The arrow in your hand is to protect the people you want to protect. Xiaochen stared at Xiaobai and said, You are too weak now. If you come with us now, the only outcome is that we will lose our lives because we want to protect you. Xiaochen stared at Xiaobai as he spoke. There was no fluctuation in his cold eyes, and his words were calm and firm. Hearing this, Xiaobai's eyes widened slightly, and he stared at Xiaochen in a daze, suddenly unable to speak. If you stay, follow Fang Ying to learn martial arts and swordsmanship, and establish your own power in the 5 prefectures Bay. When you grow up and become truly strong, I will come to take you away and fight alongside you. At that time, you will not need our protection. Xiaochen slowly stood up and stared at Xiaobai with a burning gaze. He asked in a very serious tone, Then, do you still want to come with us? This was probably the longest sentence Xiaochen had ever said in front of Xiaobai. Anyone could understand these words, but did Xiaobai really understand? It must be known that this child had just come into contact with people not long ago. Fang Ying and Shen Bailing frowned slightly, looking at Xiaobai's small body. Xiaobai raised his head and stared at Xiaochen. Finally, he pursed his lips and said with a frown, Strong, protect. Yes, only when you become strong can you protect the people you want to protect. Xiaochen looked down at Xiaobai and nodded. Jing Yu looked at the two figures, one big and one small, and suddenly had a strange feeling. It was as if after today, in the 5 prefectures Bay, there seemed to be a hidden seed that was slowly sprouting at this moment. Xiao Bai stared at Xiao Chen for a long time, and suddenly pounced on Xiao Chen. He hugged Xiao Chen's leg and said in a muffled voice, "Come to take me." My surname is Xiao." Xiao Chen's body stiffened. He clenched his fist slightly, raised his hand and pressed it on Xiao Bai's head, and said in a deep voice, "Okay." A long time later, Jing Yu would still remember that afternoon when the two figures, one big and one small, quietly woke up a terrifying expert with a few simple words. It was that hug and that one word. This was the agreement and promise between men. In the end, Xiao Chen and Jing Yu left, but Xiao Bai stayed behind. For a long time, Jing Yu would occasionally think of that cautious child who was like a monkey. That child's name was Xiao Bai. In April, there was a lot more rain. After leaving the 5 prefectures bay, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen did not dare to delay on the road. They went all the way to Mei Province. In order to hide their tracks, the two of them shuttled back and forth on land. This journey took more than 10 days. Long City was the town closest to the desert. After passing through the desert, they would directly reach the border of Tokyo. After leaving the border of Tokyo, they would truly leave. Why is it so hot here? The weather in April was not supposed to be like this, but from the time they arrived at Long City, it was so hot that Jing Yu almost died. She did not know how much water she drank along the way, and because she could not expose her face, she had to wear a veil. At this time, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were riding horses on this wide road under the scorching sun. Xiao Chen's face did not change. He wore a black leather mask on his face, and under the mask, there were a few scars. Chapter 739. Looking at the scar, it seemed to be a burn. It was the same on Jing Yu's face. A black birthmark could be seen at the corner of her eyebrows. In other people's eyes, they were wearing masks and veils to hide their ugliness. This saved them a lot of trouble along the way. "We're reaching Du City soon." Xiao Chen glanced at Jing Yu with a gentle gaze. "We're finally reaching after traveling for so long." Jing Yu sighed deeply. She narrowed her eyes as she looked at the huge city in the sandstorm. After leaving Du City, they would enter the desert. The desert was filled with sand and black rocks. After passing through the desert, they would reach the border of Tokyo. Outside the border was the Roman forest. The reason why Jing Yu chose this path was to avoid the pursuing soldiers. Another reason was that this direction was the least populated. The inspection here would not be so strict. Perhaps, in the desert, no one would care too much about what happened in the imperial city. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen rode their horses slowly and stopped at the gate of Du City. The first thing they saw was the arrest warrant that had been blown away by the wind. It had Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's portraits pasted on it. However, the guards at the gate only casually scanned the passers-by. Jing Yu heaved a sigh of relief when she saw this. She had guessed correctly. The inspection in the desert of Du City was not strict. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen dismounted and led their horses into the city. As expected, they were stopped by the guards. The guard looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen and said, "Why are you covering your faces in broad daylight? Quick, 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 take it off." The guard frowned and shouted at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Jing Yu stopped and looked at the guard. She smiled unnaturally and said, "Sir, we have encountered some trouble. Our faces are a little scary. If we don't cover our faces, we're afraid that we'll scare people." Scare people? The guard obviously did not believe her. Jing Yu helplessly took off the veil on her face and looked at the guard. The guard was originally calm, but when he saw Jing Yu's face, he immediately took a step back. Your face?" The guard's eyes widened as he looked at Jing Yu's face that was covered. Half of her face was covered with a black birthmark, and there were white bubbles of some unknown substance. It was really disgusting to look at. "Sir, I'm really sorry for scaring you." Jing Yu lowered her head guiltily and walked toward the guard with a sincere face. She kept getting closer and said, "I really didn't do it on purpose. Actually, I used to be very beautiful. If you don't believe me, sir, look at me." All right. The guard was forced back by Jing Yu and suddenly shouted to stop Jing Yu. He took a deep breath and said with a smile, "I think the two of you are in a hurry, right? Quickly go in. Don't delay." "Then what about my veil?" Jingyu raised her hand and asked while holding her veil. Wear it, wear it. The guard couldn't bear to look at Xiaoqin and turned his head away. He silently looked at Xiaoqin and saw that a small part of his skin was exposed under the mask. It was as if he had been scalded. He sighed silently. No wonder he married such a woman. It turned out that his face was also like that. Chapter 740. Sigh. They are a good match. The guard watched as Jingyu and Xiaoqin entered the city. He sighed deeply and returned to his seat. He squinted at the passers-by and stopped one or two from time to time to question them. However, he spent most of his time chatting with the people around him. Jingyu and Xiaoqin successfully entered the city. Xiaoqin looked at Jingyu strangely and asked, "When did you do that to your face?" "Guess." Jingyu looked at Xiaoqin proudly and walked forward to find the inn they would be staying at tonight. After this meal, the two of them were penniless. It's fine if they don't have money. Jingyu naturally ordered the 9th emperors to rob people. Jingyu and Xiaoqin were now millionaires in the modern world. Jingyu and Xiaoqin found a rather domineering inn and checked in. They took a comfortable bath and laid on the bed. They fell into a deep sleep. The room was much cooler than the outside and there was even ice to dissipate heat. They slept until the next morning. So sore? Jingyu rubbed her neck and turned over. She pushed Xiaoqin's arm away in disgust. Her neck hurt from rubbing. Xiaoqin opened his eyes and saw Jingyu rubbing her shoulder. He reached out to help Jingyu rub her shoulder and said faintly, "Who told you not to move when you fell asleep? Wasn't it because you insisted on hugging me?" Jingyu glared at Xiaoqin unhappily. She raised her hand and slapped away Xiaoqin's hand. She stretched and said, "I'm so hungry. I want to eat." Xiaoqin calmly raised his eyebrows. He got up and washed up. He put on his mask and held Jingyu's hand as they went downstairs. They ordered a table of dishes and ate in the inn. Jingyu ate unhappily. "Xiaoqin, I want a mask too." Jingyu lifted her veil with one hand and held food with the other. Every time she ate, she had to gently lift her veil and stuff the food into her mouth. This made Jingyu furious. She glared at Xiaoqin and said with hidden bitterness. Xiaoqin turned to look at Jingyu and silently said, "No." "Why?" Jingyu stared at Xiaoqin and said, "Isn't it the same? Why can't I wear a mask? You're fine like this." Xiaoqin calmly put down the cup in his hand and looked at the mess in front of Jingyu's table. He said, "You're already like this with your veil. If you take it off, I think the table won't be happy." "Xiaoqin, you actually despise me." Jingyu lowered her head and looked at her table. Then, she looked at Xiaoqin's table. Her cheeks suddenly became hot. Then, she slammed the table and stood up. She glared at Xiaoqin with a murderous look. The commotion attracted the attention of the people around them. They all looked curiously at Jingyu and Xiaoqin's table. Xiaoqin's face darkened slightly. He stood up and pulled Jingyu to sit down. He calmly continued to eat, ignoring everyone's expressions. "It's not impossible if you want to wear a mask," Xiaoqin said as he silently picked up some food and put it in his mouth. He chewed and said, "Tonight, you'll be on top. Satisfy me." Jingyu spat out the mouthful of soup that she had just drunk onto the table. She looked at Xiaoqin as if she had seen a ghost. Then her face turned red and white. Her mouth twitched violently. She never thought that Xiaoqin would say something like this so blatantly. It was simply, "Go away." Jingyu pushed Xiaoqin away with a red face. Chapter 741. Xiaoqin dodged and didn't fall to the ground. He sat down and looked at the table full of food. He didn't have the desire to continue eating. He raised his hand and asked the waiter to remove the dishes and serve some fruits and pastries. He leaned back on the chair and listened to the conversation in the inn. Sacrifice. Jingyu listened for a long time. The most she heard was something about worship and sacrifice. Suddenly, she was confused. She turned to Xiaoqin and asked, "Do you know what sacrifice is?" "I've heard of it." Xiaoqin narrowed his eyes and said, "When I was traveling to other countries, I heard that in the desert, there are many believers who worship gods. I thought that I would only see them in the desert. I didn't expect that there would be a sacrifice in Long City. It turns out to be like this? Jing Yu suddenly nodded. In modern times, there were such clans. There were people who believed in all kinds of things. Jing Yu could understand this quite well. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen sat in the inn and listened to the people talking about the sacrifice. They said that there would be a grand sacrifice in Long City tonight. Many people would go and participate. Jing Yu was very curious about what the sacrifice in ancient times was like. Anyway, they were going to buy the things they needed to enter the desert. Tonight, they could see what the sacrifice in Long City was like. After Jing Yu and Xiao Chen ate and drank to their heart's content, they went out to the streets to buy some things. There were all kinds of things in the city. The two of them walked leisurely in the city. One of them wore a mask while the other covered his face. Almost no one looked at them on the streets. What are we missing? Jing Yu frowned and thought. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked on the street. Both of them carried various things in their hands. They stood on the street and thought about what they were missing. We've bought all the important things. There shouldn't be anything else. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows calmly. Jing Yu pursed her lips slightly and was about to nod in agreement when she suddenly saw a slender figure standing in front of a stall not far away, frowning slightly with a conflicted expression. Miss, I can't accept this. The man's clothes were as white as snow, and he had a gentle smile on his face. He looked at the short and chubby girl in front of him with a sincere expression and said, Miss, it's best if you take this back. But I like you. The girl had thick eyebrows and big eyes. Her body was quite sturdy. As the two of them walked back and forth, they attracted the attention of the passers-by on the road. Looking at the man's gentle and elegant appearance, there was a faint smile on his face. However, his eyes were filled with helplessness at the situation in front of him. The manservant standing behind the man furrowed his brows and stared at the scene in front of him with widened eyes. The girl was holding a purse in her hand. She looked at the man and said, I'm not like you scholars. I don't know much about this purse. It's said that it's the best thing to express love. Don't you feel it? Or do you look down on me? The girl looked like she wouldn't let go if he didn't explain clearly. The man was helpless. He had already said it so clearly. Why was she still so shameless? Miss, our young master said that he doesn't like you. The servant stepped forward and said to the girl with the purse, You've been chasing our young master for 3 to 4 days. Aren't you tired? Chapter 742. My father taught me before. One must persevere in doing something. The woman was born with a heroic spirit, so her words were also quite heroic. She looked at the two people with a resolute expression as she replied. Jing Yu saw this scene from afar and walked closer with some doubts. When she saw the man in white standing proudly, she was stunned. She looked at the smiling tiger. His eyes were clearly filled with impatience, but he still had a smile on his face. In this world, who else could have such skills besides Fong Zicheng? Obviously, the person who was being pestered by the woman was Fong Zicheng. Xiao Chen, am I seeing things? Isn't that Fong Zicheng? Jing Yu asked as she stared at Xiao Chen in astonishment. Yes. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows slightly and continued to observe the situation in front of him. Miss, I have urgent matters to attend to. I really can't talk to you properly. Fong Zicheng seemed to have been pushed to the edge by this young lady. The smile on his face stiffened a little, but he still bowed politely to the young lady and was about to leave. Young master, tell me the truth. Do you already have someone in your heart? Is that why you won't accept me? The woman took a big step forward and blocked Fong Zicheng's path. Fong Zicheng felt a burst of anger. He really didn't know how there could be such a difficult person. Fong Zicheng took a deep breath and nodded solemnly to the woman. That's right. I already have someone in my heart. Please don't make things difficult for me. So you already have someone in your heart. When the woman heard Fong Zicheng's words, she was instantly hurt. Tears instantly appeared in her eyes. The speed of this change stunned Jing Yu, who was standing at the side. Oh, don't cry. Fong Zicheng was also shocked by the woman's sudden tears. He looked at the woman and said, I'm sorry. I made things difficult for young master. The girl bowed deeply to Fang Zicheng and said, "Since you already have someone you like, how can I break up a pair of mandarin ducks? I've troubled you for the past few days, let's meet again if fate wills it." The woman raised her hand to wipe away her tears and bowed slightly to Fang Zicheng. Then, she walked away in a carefree manner. He really left. He left just like that? Fang Zicheng stood in place with a stunned expression. This person who had chased after him for so long, just because he said that his heart already belonged to someone else? If he had known earlier that it would be so effective, he would have said it right from the start. Why would he have hesitated for so long, causing him to run to Great Desert City to hide from people? Thinking of this, Fang Zicheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The crowd also slowly dispersed because of the woman. At this moment, Jing Yu walked up slowly and stood beside Fang Zicheng. Seeing that Fang Zicheng was still hesitant as he watched the woman leave, she revealed a faint smile in her eyes and said, "If you can't bear to part with her, then go chase after her." "Nonsense, why would I?" Fang Zicheng replied unhappily. He turned around to refute Jing Yu's words. However, when he turned around, he paused. He looked at Jing Yu suspiciously and asked curiously, "Miss, have we met before?" "Oh, our young master Fang is so forgetful. How long has it been since we last met? You already don't recognize me?" Jing Yu curled her lips and looked at Fang Zicheng with displeasure. Chapter 743. You are. Fang Zicheng's eyes were filled with surprise when he heard this voice. He looked at Jing Yu excitedly and said, "You are Jing Yu? Can't I be?" Jing Yu crossed her arms and looked at Fang Zicheng with interest. Her eyes were full of smiles. "It really is you!" Fang Zicheng suddenly exclaimed happily. He looked at Xiao Chun beside Jing Yu and his eyes lit up even more. He opened his mouth to speak, but Xiao Chun glanced at him and said coldly, "Do you want everyone in the city to know about this?" "Ah." Fang Zicheng quickly restrained his emotions and turned back into a gentle young master. He smiled at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen and said, "Are the two of you willing to come with me to the tea house for a moment?" Jing Yu and Xiao Chen looked at Fang Zicheng and their faces darkened. They looked as if they didn't know this idiot and turned to leave. "I told you not to call me by my name, but you actually turned around." Such hypocrisy was really unacceptable. In the tea house, the three of them found a quiet place to sit down. Jing Yu looked at Fang Zicheng and asked, "Why are you here? Did Xiao Yi chase you out too?" "I'm here to look for you." Fang Zicheng's eyes widened slightly and said, "After you left, the imperial city became a mess. The demon empress is in power and the court is in chaos. The Tokyo is no longer the Tokyo of the past." Fang Zicheng sighed deeply and said bitterly, "My father is seriously ill and has already resigned from his position to recuperate at home. He used this as an excuse to not be in charge of anything. I have no friends in the imperial city, so I came to find you." "Demon Empress? What's the situation?" Jing Yu blinked in confusion and asked. "The current empress of the Tokyo is not Fei Yazhu, but Ning Xiangyun." Fang Zicheng paused slightly and said, "After Imperial Consort Fu fell from power, Imperial Consort Xiang became the emperor's most favored concubine. With a little bit of planning, Imperial Consort Xiang's methods are extraordinary. The empress is no match for her. Moreover, I don't know why, but the emperor's love for Imperial concubine Xiang is terrifying. He didn't even attend morning court for half a month. Do you think that the empress can still fight with Imperial concubine Xiang at this point?" Jing Yu and Xiao Chen fell into deep thought. Although Jing Yu knew that Ning Xiangyuan was going to become the empress sooner or later, she didn't expect it to happen so quickly. "How is Fu Ruoqing now?" Jing Yu frowned slightly and asked Fang Zicheng. Jing Yu still remembered what Fu Ruoqing said that day in the Great Hall. She was a pitiful woman who only cared about Xiao Chen. What awaited her after that day was death. Unfortunately, due to an accident, Imperial Consort Fu lost her sight. She has been living in the cold palace for a long time and there has been no news from her. Fang Zicheng looked deeply at Jing Yu and said, "There has been no news, which means that we don't know if she is alive or dead." I can't be sure if Imperial Consort Fu is alive or dead. Jing Yu and Xiao Chun fell into silence after Fang Zicheng said this. In the end, Xiao Chun lowered his head and didn't say a word. If I'm not wrong, Ning Xiangyuan must have played a part in the Tokyo sending troops to chase after you. Fang Zicheng narrowed his eyes and said, the person leading the troops is the second prince, Xiao Jingran. Chapter 744. How do you know? Jing Yu raised her brows slightly and said, this Ning Xiangyun is just a concubine in the end. How could she control the emperor's will? Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Fang Zicheng with a scrutinizing gaze. When Fang Zicheng heard Jing Yu's words, his lips curved slightly. He pointed at his head and said, this place told me. It also told me that this Ning Xiangyun must have used some unspeakable method to capture the emperor's heart. Jing Yu's eyes grew cold. She thought about what Nailin Yu had said to her that day on the boat. Then she thought about what Fang Zicheng had just said. Suddenly, she seemed to understand something. If Nailin Yu and Ning Xiangyun had made a deal, then the contents of their deal, an unspeakable method to capture the emperor's heart, the poison sect, Jing Yu's eyes grew cold. She didn't need to think to know what this so-called unspeakable method was. Although Xiao Yi doted on Ning Xiangyun, Jing Yu's impression of Xiao Yi was that he wasn't an incapable ruler who didn't know what was important. On the contrary, Xiao Yi was very shrewd and could be considered a good emperor. But now, he was suddenly attracted to a little girl? This was too abnormal. Xiao Jingran led troops to hunt her down. Then what about the crown prince? What about the crown prince consort? Jing Yu frowned slightly as she looked at Fang Zicheng. The crown prince is imprisoned in the eastern palace. The crown prince consort is in prison. Fang Zicheng paused slightly before continuing. General Shangguan's family is also in prison. What did you say? Jing Yu stood up with a serious expression. Panic flashed through her eyes and her heart trembled violently. She stared at Fang Zicheng and asked, what's going on? Why is General Shangguan's family in prison? Isn't Miaoqiu the crown prince consort? Why is she in prison? The legitimate daughter of the Shangguan family released the evildoer of the rebellious official and was accused of being an accomplice of the rebellious official. A letter came from an unknown place and accused General Shangguan of secretly raising soldiers. All sorts of crimes were pinned on him. General Shangguan's estate was confiscated and General Shangguan was stripped of his position and thrown into prison. Fang Zicheng faintly narrowed his eyes and said, the crown prince consort sent a fake imperial edict to save the Shangguan family, but she was caught. Yu's eyes were filled with killing intent. How long had it been? A short time. Shangguan Linglan's father and elder brother were imprisoned because of this. Lu Miaoqiu was also imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice's prison. Jing Yu knew very well that Lu Miaoqiu was never an impulsive person. If she didn't have a meticulous plan and careful consideration, she would never try to save people. Since she had a plan to save people, she was still caught. It was easy to imagine what kind of situation they were in now. Jing Yu, I came to find you to tell you about the Tokyo's current situation. There's one more thing I need to tell you. Fang Zicheng stared deeply into Jing Yu's golden eyes and said, don't go back to the Tokyo. Do what you want to do. Linglan once said that her father is my father. My father has already left me. How can I give up on her father? Jing Yu clenched her fists tightly. The intense emotions in her eyes were filled with brutality. Chapter 745. Ning Xiangyun, oh Ning Xiangyu, you actually forced me to this extent. Jing Yu said through gritted teeth. Jing Yu knew what Fang Zicheng was trying to say. The Tokyo Imperial City was practically Ning Xiangyuan's world. Who else but Ning Xiangyuan could send the general's estate and the crown princess to prison? Jing Yu, you should know why they did this. If you go back to the Tokyo Imperial City to save them now, you will only make things worse. Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu and said, you will find out about what happened in the Imperial City sooner or later. What I need to do is to stop you in advance. There is only one way to save them. Go to the Roman forest as soon as possible. The The Roman forest doesn't belong to any country or power. Your development there is the best way to save them. Don't make everything they have done meaningless. Fang Zicheng looked at Jingyu and then at Xiaoqun. Xiaoqun raised his hand slightly to hold Jingyu's hand. Jingyu turned to look at Jingyu and then lowered her head. She blinked and her golden eyes returned to their original black color. She lowered her head and asked indifferently, "How are they going to treat the general's estate and the crown princess?" "Don't worry. The crown prince is not a useless person." The corners of Fang Zicheng's mouth curled up slightly as he said, "Moreover, the 9th royal uncle's power in Dongqing Imperial City is not just a little bit. In the short term, the general's manor and the crown princess will not be in any danger, but I'm afraid that physical pain is unavoidable." Jingyu leaned against the back of the chair and looked outside without speaking. Xiaoqun turned to look at Fang Zicheng and asked, "How did you come to Du City?" "Ninth Emperors, with this young master's intelligence, it is very simple for me to come to Du City." When Fang Zicheng heard Xiaoqun's question, he raised his chin proudly and said, "Based on my understanding of you, through elimination and speculation, this is the only path that makes sense. From Yangzhou to Wufu Bay and then to Shangling City in Mei Province, this is an excellent route. Perhaps the 9 emperors wouldn't choose this route, but Jingyu would definitely choose this route, am I right?" Fang Zicheng smiled as he looked at Jingyu and Xiaoqun. "It seems that your brain is still useful." Jingyu raised her eyebrows in surprise when she heard Fang Zicheng accurately point out their route. Such a simple matter, there's no need to test this young master." Fang Zicheng proudly raised his hand to pick up the teacup and said, "Xiao Jingran was so sure that you would take the road in Lin and province. How ridiculous." "Oh, why is it ridiculous?" Jingyu looked at Fang Zicheng with interest and asked. If the 9th emperors were to travel alone, then Xiao Jingran would definitely have guessed correctly. If the 9th emperors were to choose to go to the Roman forest, he would first choose this quick and easy road that goes straight into the Roman forest without any turns. Isn't that right, 9th emperors? Fang Zicheng tilted his head and looked at Xiaoqun. Xiaoqun replied indifferently, "Lin and province has the most power in the pugilistic world. If I were to travel alone, I would be unimpeded." That's right. The target of this pursuit is not the 9th emperors, but the empress with different pupils. Fang Zicheng smiled and said, "Since we want to catch Jingyu, and Jingyu is with Xiaoqun, is there a need to think? We must be thinking according to Jingyu's train of thought, and the route we chose is also according to Jingyu's route." Chapter 746. Jingyu's mouth twitched as she looked at Fang Zicheng. What he meant was that Xiaoqun listened to her. "Come, 9th emperors, let me interview you." Jingyu put on an act as she looked at Xiaoqun and said, "How do you feel about being ridiculed by someone for listening to a woman?" "I'm happy to." When Xiaoqun heard Jingyu's words, he calmly raised his eyebrows and coolly said those 3 words. Jingyu was stunned. Fang Zicheng laughed loudly and looked at Xiaoqun with interest. "In this world, only you, Jingyu, have the ability to command the 9th emperors. You, on the other hand..." Xiaoqun coldly turned his head and looked at Fang Zicheng. "I've said what I wanted to say. What are you still sitting here for?" Fang Zicheng's face stiffened. He gritted his teeth and glared at Xiaoqun. "I've only been sitting here for a while. I haven't even had a sip of water after talking so much." "Oh, then drink." Xiaoqun put his hand on Jingyu's shoulder and said, "Drink it and get lost." Fang Zicheng's face suddenly darkened. He looked at Xiaoqun as if he wanted to swallow him alive. He said with a sad face, "I came all the way here to find you, and this is how you treat me? This is too much, too much. You can write a letter. I didn't ask you to come." Xiaoqun calmly retorted. Fang Zicheng's bellyful of complaints had no place to vent. "I don't care. I'm not leaving." Fang Zicheng leaned back and tilted his head. "Then I'm not going back to the Imperial City. The world is so chaotic now. Do you have the heart to let me run around alone in this chaotic world? After all, I'm still your friend, right?" Jingyu looked at Fang Zicheng with a dark face. This was the first time she had seen someone so shamelessly refuse to leave. "Don't worry, I won't disturb you. Fang Zicheng's words were definitely directed at Xiao Chen. He looked as if he understood everything, which made Jing Yu's face turn even darker. Fang Zicheng shamelessly stayed behind with a servant named Xiaoku. He was a clever young man. Jing Yu originally thought that this servant was one of Fang Zicheng's lackeys. However, Xiao Chen said, "How do you think Fang Zicheng survived all the way to Du City?" As soon as this question was asked, Jing Yu immediately understood. This manservant was no ordinary person. As the night deepened, bonfires were lit in Du City. Du City was considered lively during the day, but it was a different scene at night. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen had just changed their clothes. As soon as they stepped out of the inn, they saw many people wearing strange clothes on the street. Do you see? Those people wearing long robes are believers of the God worship sect. Every time it's this time, they will change into the God worship sect's clothes and go to the altar to offer sacrifices to the god. Fang Zicheng was wearing a light blue robe with Xiaoku behind him. He stood beside Jing Yu and Xiao Chen as he spoke. What god do they worship? Jing Yu asked curiously. Their god. Fang Zicheng raised his head slightly. Jing Yu followed Fang Zicheng's gaze and saw the flames soaring into the sky. The raging flames seemed to be carrying out a very solemn ceremony. Jing Yu frowned slightly and followed Fang Zicheng and Xiao Chen to the altar. Many people wearing strange clothes were holding all kinds of feathers and bells. They were jumping and shouting on the altar. A group of people were kneeling below and chanting something she couldn't understand. Chapter 747. There were many people standing outside the altar. Some were chatting, some were looking at the altar in front of them without speaking, and some were bowing their heads and chanting silently as if they were praying for blessings. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen stood at the outermost edge and watched the strange actions of those people. Seeing the person standing in front of the altar and reading out the words, Jing Yu sighed slightly. She tugged at Xiao Chen's sleeve and turned to walk out. The altar attracted many people. After walking out of this lively place, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked together to a high ground. The wind at night was slightly chilly, but it was so hot during the day. Jing Yu looked up at the bright moon and felt a little melancholy. She raised her hand and touched her neck. There was a small bottle hanging there, and it contained her father's ashes. Xiao Chen. Jing Yu clenched the jade bottle in her hand and said, "No one from the Shangguan family can be missing." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a burning gaze. The firmness and seriousness in her words made Xiao Chen's heart tremble slightly. He raised his hand to hold Jing Yu's shoulder and said, "Okay." Jing Yu stood on the high ground and looked into the distance. She had never thought that she would be in such a sorry state here, but all along, her only thought was to charge forward. That kind of lively feeling, whether it was love, kinship, moving or hatred, they were all so lively. Jing Yu clearly knew what she had to do. Under the full moon, Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes flickered with a faint green light. The feeling in her heart was very different. On the other side of the high ground, the sound of singing and dancing could be heard. Jing Yu looked sideways and saw many people dancing around a bonfire, laughing and playing. The noise on the other side was very different from the tranquility on this side, but it also seemed very intimate. Night always passed very quickly. The next morning, Jing Yu and the others left Long City and walked towards the desert. The desert didn't seem like a desert. There were caravans passing by everywhere, and there were also sand snakes and lizards. Jing Yu rode on a horse with a veil on her face. She looked at the scenery around her and felt the scorching sun. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Fortunately, their group didn't have anything. Even if they encountered bandits in the desert, they probably wouldn't be robbed. "Ah, it's so hot." Jing Yu complained countless times under the scorching sun. "Drink some water." Xiao Chen said the same 3 words countless times. "Do you want to rest?" Fang Zicheng asked countless times. Looking at his eager eyes, Jing Yu also looked at Xiao Chen expectantly. Xiao Chen didn't even look at Fang Zicheng. He said calmly, "If we don't hurry, we will have to sleep in the desert tonight." You have to know that at night, there are always packs of wolves and bandits in the desert. Sigh. Fang Zicheng sighed faintly and followed with resignation. Based on our speed, we should be able to reach the nearest post house by nightfall, Xiaochen said calmly as he rode on the horse with one hand and looked at the map with the other. If we can save some trouble, then let's save it. Jingyu sighed silently. She urged her horse to follow behind Xiaochen and continued forward. After walking for a short distance, they suddenly saw a person lying in the middle of the road. Chapter 748. This is... Jingyu and the rest reined in their horses and walked towards the person lying on the ground. The person lying on the ground was a man. It was hard to tell his age. He looked like he was in his 20s or 30s. His face was pale and his lips were chapped. He looked like a person on the verge of death due to lack of water. Fang Zicheng opened his water sack and fed the man some water. The man slowly woke up and gulped down the water in large mouthfuls. Only then did he look at Jingyu and Xiaochen. Many thanks. Saving my life. Jingyu burst into tears the moment the man opened his mouth. This man actually stuttered. No need. Fang Zicheng slowly stood up and looked at the short man. He asked, "Why did you faint here?" "I'm so angry when I talk about it." The man's face was filled with grief and indignation as he said, I was with someone, scouted for treasures. In the end that person snatched my things and ran away. That's why I fainted because there was no water. Jingyu almost went crazy when she heard this. This feeling of speaking was simply torture to death for someone with OCD. I see. Fang Zicheng nodded and said, I'm afraid this journey is not safe. If you don't mind, why don't you come with us? I think you will be rescued when we reach the relay station in front. Really? Many thanks, sir. The man heard Fang Zicheng's words and immediately thanked him excitedly. Just like that, this person followed Jingyu on their journey. Along the way, Fang Zicheng patiently chatted with this person. From their conversation, Fang Zicheng learned that this person's name was Ma Jin. His ancestors had been searching for treasures in the desert for generations. This time, because he heard that there were treasures, he followed a group of people. He didn't expect that halfway through, those bastards would steal all his things and run away. This caused him to walk in the desert for 3 days and 3 nights without meeting a single living person. He was almost eaten by a wolf. If they hadn't met Jingyu's group today, they wouldn't have been able to find a single bone after the night had passed. Sir, where are you going? Sir, where are you going? Ma Jin asked as he looked sideways at Fang Zicheng. For the sake of convenience, Jingyu gave her horse to Ma Jin so that she could ride with Xiaochen. It was obvious that the 9th emperors were in a particularly good mood during this journey. Xiaochen, where did you put your hand? Jingyu said through gritted teeth. Xiaochen silently retracted his hand from Jingyu's waist and said calmly, It wasn't me. It's not your head. Jingyu raised her hand and twisted Xiaochen's waist. Xiaochen's body stiffened, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. Because of this delay, when the sky was completely dark, they finally saw the relay station lit with red lanterns. Most of the people in the relay station were merchants who were resting or travelers. Fortunately, this day wasn't considered a hot day, so there were relatively few travelers. When Jingyu and Xiaochen's group arrived, there were rooms for them to rest in. In the main hall of the relay station, Jingyu's group changed their clothes before coming down to eat. There was a lot of noise around them. There were many people drinking, eating, and talking. Ma Jin seemed to be really hungry. He was eating so much that he didn't have the energy to talk. Chapter 749. Jingyu and Xiaochen were eating when they heard someone talking at the table next to them. What did you say? Something happened at Eagle Mountain again? Someone sitting at the table next to Jingyu spoke, and Jingyu and Xiaochen looked over. They turned slightly and saw that there were 3 or 4 people at the table, talking with wine glasses in their hands. That's right. I heard another caravan is gone. Another man said, This is already the 5th caravan. If this continues, no one will dare to take that route anymore. What the hell is going on? Another person seemed to be very puzzled about this matter and asked doubtfully, "What else can it be? Didn't you see the corpses they dragged back? They were all eaten by wild beasts. They must have encountered a pack of wolves." The man who spoke first said firmly, "They offended the wolf god. This is their retribution. They deserved it." Jingyu was confused. She looked at Xiao Chen and Fang Zicheng in confusion. The two of them were also confused. "My lord, where are you going?" Ma Jin looked at Fang Zicheng, Jingyu, and the others with a puzzled look on his face when he heard the conversation. "We are going to cross the desert and head towards the Tokyo border." Fang Zicheng looked at Ma Jin and said, "If I remember correctly, we have to pass through Eagle Mountain to get to the border, right?" Ma Jin heard Fang Zicheng's words and said excitedly, that we can't go there." "What's wrong?" "I heard from the people over there that wolves often appear at Eagle Mountain." Fang Zicheng frowned and asked Ma Jin. Jingyu and Xiao Chen looked at Ma Jin and waited for his answer. That place can't be crossed." Ma Jin said with a solemn expression, Just 3 months ago, something big happened in the Eagle Mountain." Jingyu gritted her teeth. Ma Jin's words were too painful to listen to. "Stop talking." Jingyu really couldn't stand it anymore. She solemnly raised her hand to interrupt Ma Jin's words. She took a deep breath, raised her hand to pick up the wine jar and walked to the table next to her. She put down the wine jar in her hand and took out a silver ingot from her waist and threw it on the table. "Fellow heroes, my friends have just arrived, and we would like to inquire about something. What strange things have happened in Eagle Mountain? If anyone can tell us everything, this jar of wine and silver ingot will be his." Jingyu's words attracted the attention of everyone in the relay station. "However, if anyone dares to spout nonsense and try to fool me with useless nonsense, then—" When Jingyu said this, she casually threw away the bowl in her hand. The chopsticks in Xiao Chen's hand instantly flew straight into the middle of the bowl. Under everyone's astonished gaze, the chopsticks directly penetrated the bottom of the bowl and fixed on the wall. The strange thing was that this porcelain bowl was penetrated by the chopsticks, and it was firmly fixed on the wall. There was no trace of a crack. Many of the people sitting here were people of the Jianghu. It was not a big skill to penetrate a bowl with chopsticks, but after penetrating it, the bowl did not crack. How powerful must you be to be able to do that? Looking at the bowl and chopsticks that were fixed to the wall, the precise technique and profound inner strength, the people in the relay station who originally had evil intentions because of Jingyu's words instantly became obedient. Originally, when they saw Jingyu's generosity, they thought that a lamb waiting to be slaughtered had arrived. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.